We're on. Receiving our content. We're live! No!
Really going.
There's something new here called super stickers. What's up, everyone? I have no idea what that is. I'm looking on here and it says super stickers. So if any of you want to throw some super stickers this way.
We might learn what they are.
Okay, so Peter Smart. What's up, Peter? Okay, so many of you know Mr. Keith Williams here from 5 Watt World.
Otherwise known as the human freeze pedal.
Human freeze pedal.
That's right.
Okay, so the last time that Keith was here, he was at 400 and how many subscribers?
Not that I was counting, but 427.
427 subscribers.
Yeah.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know Keith, he has a channel called 5 Watt World, and now he's right at about 50,000. As a matter of fact, the people that don't know Keith should subscribe to his channel, 5 Watt World, so that we will push him over 50,000 right now. That's halfway.
That's right. In this time.
Right this minute.
49,280 or something.
Yeah, so you can push him over that way. Then he's over the hump of the hill, heading down towards 100,000, which is the first YouTube award.
There you go. Because it's all about the awards.
It's all about the awards.
All about the plaques.
Okay, before we go on, the discount code for today's live stream, 30% off anything in my store, is RB251. 251. Could be 6 then, because we have to get back around to the 2 chord. So, Keith and I are going to talk about what to practice. This is a common thing. Keith practices all the time still. He needs to kind of keep his chops up for his channel.
More than ever. Yeah.
He's working on videos constantly. If you haven't seen his videos, they're amazingly great. They kind of go between, what would you say, historic?
It's sort of a mix between something I've settled into calling the short histories, which are histories of gear pieces.
He has amazing short histories of all different types of instruments. The Les Paul, the Telecaster, the Stratocaster,
if you Google it up, they're going to come.
He has the top videos on YouTube for all these different things. I mean, literally the top ones. His Telecaster's videos got 400,000 views, but they're basic histories of the instruments.
Little mini documentaries. They're about between 20 and 30 minutes long. The Les Paul one's longer. They were looking around for the answers for a long time. Still are. Anyway, and then the other side of the channel is kind of gear essentialism, minimalism, sort of how to get, the tagline for the channel is the most music from the least gear. And I'm not really that much into counting how much gear people have. It's just this idea that you might question. I love the irony of having this conversation in this room.
Right.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I shot a new station ID in here last night. It was perfect.
Right. Of all places and all people to talk to about having minimal gear, this is definitely not the one.
But actually, Rick and I have talked a lot. We always talk a lot about this, but especially when I'm here, it's kind of the minimum amount for what he does, as opposed to the minimum amount for what I do. Everybody's definition of what's enough is completely different, and that's how it should be.
I don't have 50. I don't have 50 Les Pauls. I have 3.
Yeah.
I have a standard, a custom, which are different sounding because that one has an ebony fingerboard, the custom. Yeah. Standard has a rosewood. Yeah. And then I have a...
you have a P90.
And I have a P90 one.
Yeah.
Okay, gold top, which is 3 totally different sounds. And historically, I would have one of a bunch of different things because we would have to in the studio, if we were going for something, you'd say, oh, this sound is okay, but if we had a Telecaster or something, it sounds a little bit muddy in the mid range with the humbuckers. I still run into this constantly.
Yeah, we did it yesterday.
We did it yesterday.
We were switching guitars out on a video that we were making. We were looking for some sonic space in a mix that was already done. We were adding some desperately needed parts. I'm not going to give it away. But we found it. Actually, in that case, it was this guitar. And it just fit perfectly where a different guitar was just not going to work. So, what's enough for Rick is probably more than is enough for me. I know my wife's watching. It's more than enough for me. But I've actually, in my life, had to kind of pull back and look at
how much stuff... He used to have 27 guitars. Right. Now, he doesn't tell people that. He used to have more guitars than I did.
You shouldn't out me like on my own.
Oh, sorry.
But there was a time when Rick was producing records. He had like 7 or 8 guitars, and I had like 2.
Tell him how many years I would go without buying stuff.
Yeah, years and years. Yeah,
I would never buy an instrument, an amplifier, nothing. I probably went for 7 or 8 years where I never bought a single thing other than guitar strings.
And actually, ironically, given the space, you actually are much less a gearhead than I am. The fact is, I do these histories because I'm so curious about, why people go on and on about broadcaster pickups. And you're not. You're like, you would call me or Dave back in the time. So I'm looking at this Marshall. Which year should I have? We just had that conversation with Dave because you're adding a Marshall, So and you're less of a gearhead, but you have more because you needed the tools and
so
I have less.
I brought Keith by this store the other day to look at a Marshall amp. It was I thought it was a 1972 because that's what the guys at the shop said. And Keith said, "Can we open it up?" So the guy unscrewed the thing.
Yeah, he was great.
Great.
Right. And we should go back to, I actually built amps, and Rick actually has an amp of mine that he built, a bass amp. I built amps for a while with this guy in Burlington, Vermont. Give him a shout, Dan Lurie at FYD Amps. He schooled me on all kinds of stuff. But I learned enough, it's like classic, just enough to be dangerous. So we opened up this 71. And I mean, unlike every other Marshall you'll ever see, nobody had touched it inside. The original solder joints for the factory were all exactly that same original kind of...
And you could tell that how?
That sort of orangey rosin flux color that they have, they were all the same. There was no bright silver new stuff. I mean, good news, bad news, it hasn't had a cap job, but in this case, it's good. You can make your decisions on who's going to do that work yourself.
And we found out that the amp was actually built in 1971.
Yeah.
And when I asked Dave what the amp is worth and what ones are worth having, because Dave is so knowledgeable about that stuff.
Yeah.
He said 70 and 71 are the best. He said they sound better than Plexis, which is interesting because when I went to Crossroads, I was talking with Peter Stroud, who's a fantastic guitarist, plays with Sheryl Crow, and one of my neighbors. And I asked Peter, we were right near Peter Frampton's guitar rig backstage. And I said, what is that 70? He said, that's an early 70s Marshall. I said, do you think that that's the same Marshall that he played on the live album, Frampton Comes Alive? He said it easily could be. It's of that era. And,
I'm laughing because we're here to talk about practicing. We immediately slid into the gear thing because of the channel, because of what the channel is. So like I said, the irony is that in a way, I'm more of a gearhead, but I've really kind of come down to distilling it down. I don't have 27 guitars anymore. I've got 3 acoustic guitars, and I've got a few electric guitars that I'm actually still going to get rid of, probably 3 more. I'm playing Strandberg guitars now, and they just kind of distilled down to the essence of what it is as an electric guitar. I played PRSs for a long, long time. They're great guitars. But this is the kind of back and forth Rick and I always have.
Well, the irony, too, is that I like to play, as you guys know, my Dan Electro guitar, which is the least expensive guitar. I'm not going to say cheapest guitar, but the least expensive guitar
in the
entire room.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't pay thousands of dollars for guitars. I mean, I kind of had a limit of paying maybe $2,000 at the most for a guitar, which for people that are professional musicians, that's actually not very much money. I know it sounds like a lot, but for a pro guitar player, if you make your living that way, most professional guitarists that I know have far more expensive guitars. Their main guitars are far more expensive than that. And since I bought things for studio work, I'd be, maybe I have I think, is that telly over there a Mexican telly or something? Like,
Yep.
I've got a Mexican telly over there that has a humbucker on it, and it's, it's $300 guitar or so. This is $150 when I bought it and everything. But if you watch the making of the Metallica Black Album, you'll see James Hetfield playing Sad But True, don't, dugga, 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 on a Dan Electro like this. So let's talk about practicing, because that's what we're here to talk about. Right. Once again, the discount code for the Beato book, because that's what you should practice out of, is RB251. Keith and I always talk about practicing, how you should do it. This is a big topic on this channel. I know that most people you don't have all the time in the world to do it. And it's like, what do you spend your time on?
Right. We were brainstorming things to talk about in the stream. And I said to Rick yesterday, so how much time should you spend every day practicing? And you said, without hesitating, 10 hours. 10 hours. 10 hours a day. So don't look for any new history videos from me for a while.
Yeah, I said when he said how much should you practice a day, I said 10 hours, because that's if you really no.
But I had a great lesson with a saxophone player one time, and he basically said to me, 15 minutes with a metronome every day would take your practice forward more than taking days off in between and those kinds of things. And so that's the segue.
The daily practice is the most important thing. If it were 10 minutes a day for 7 days versus 5 hours one day, you're going to get far more out of those out of practicing 7 days in a row than you are with with practicing 5 hours one day.
It's like any language. If you go to take foreign language at the college level, if it's a good language program, you're going to be taking every day of the week for the first 2 or 3 levels at least. You're going to be doing it every day, and this is the same thing.
And there's a lot of there's so many different things to practice that my first advice is to keep a journal of what you're practicing. Now, it's very easy to do that. You can record things on your phone. You can write things down in a notebook. You can you put up a spreadsheet and divide your practicing into different areas. That's kind of what I did before spreadsheets, is I had a notebook and I would fill in the amount of time that I would practice each thing every day.
I used for a long time, they changed the app recently, but I used a meditation app where you could create your own little pieces. And so I would create a different one. And then, it's easy to tell yourself at the end of the week, oh, I got in most of my practice week. But if you can find something that would give you a visual summary, I think the iPhone Health app actually lets us do this. I think it's something I'm going to use now. And then you can just see, well, how much time did I really spend on arpeggios and how much did I learn learning tunes? Rick turns to me and he says, so what do you want to play? What tunes do you know? I'm like, I don't know tunes. I don't practice that enough.
Well, repertoire is a big part of practicing as well.
That. Exactly.
So if you practice things like scales and arpeggios, one thing that I don't really mention is that you should practice them with different techniques. For example, if I'm going to take a scale, a G major scale, and I'm going to practice that in intervals like sixths. Okay, if you want to play a G major 7 chord. Now I practiced that. That was all alternate picking. Down, up, down, up. Now obviously that's not as fast as you can play them, but that's about as fast as you can alternate pick. I probably can alternate pick. That's really incredibly inefficient to try and play it that way. So that's a case where you would use hybrid picking. So if I play... you can already hear, when I say hybrid picking, I'm going to use my middle finger. Okay, so that is a different technique that you would incorporate in your practice and things that a lot of people don't think of is to incorporate legato playing, alternate picking, sweep picking, hybrid picking, and that's pretty much it.
Playing the same exercise but with a different picking
Correct.
structure to work on that.
Correct. Even if you're practicing your scale, so I'm playing a G major. So I'm alternate picking that. I can also play it with legato fingering. I can play with a where I'm economy picking. So I go down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down. So that's called economy picking, because I'm not going down, up, and then going away and then going back down like that. Thank you, trolls. Appreciate that. And then you could, there's just so many different techniques to practice for that. Each day, what I would do is I would practice your scales with a new, I would practice them alternate picking on Monday. Tuesday, I would do economy picking. Wednesday, I would do hybrid picking. Thursday, and whatever it is. Because you never know. What you don't want to do is you don't want to get held up by, oh, I can only do the sweep arpeggio like that. So I can only play it that way. And so what if I want to go? But if I want to play that, well, then I have to add that extra note to that. Or let's say, if I want to come down alternate picking after, if I want to come down a different way, you don't want to be stuck on just being able to play your arpeggios a particular way just because you've only practiced them that way.
That's where I am right now.
Your buddy looks like Lennon with hair. I don't know who that is. Lennon. You mean Lennon? Lennon? You don't mean Vladimir, right?
That would be mildly not courteous.
Wait, he didn't have hair.
He said, but I have hair. I look like Lennon with hair.
So, Vladimir.
Yeah, where's the band hammer? Where's that band hammer thing that Ann got you? I was accused last week in a comment that this is glued on, that I'm walking around the world. This is a disguise.
Keith is increased. He used to have a soul patch right here back in the 80s. Yeah. This is not a soul patch. That's a freaking goatee right there.
It's taken over.
It's but yeah, so it's gotten bigger and bigger.
It is.
I told him he should grow it down to here. Actually, that's not
It's a
true.
Rembrandt thing. Yeah. It's a Dutch thing. So where do you come down on working on your scales? You always hear this, and I never think to ask you. Where do you come down on setting a metronome at 60, play your scales, change it to 70, play the scales, 80, 90. Pay attention to where you start coming apart and realize that that's, it's showing stuff in your playing. Do you...
Absolutely.
Okay, really strong on the metronome.
Yeah, metronome is really, really big. You don't have to go by increments of one. You should go by what the old school metronomes would be, the black metronomes, electric ones that might skip 4, might go from 70 to 74 to 78
right.
to 80 to 82.
I usually jump like 10. And then
yeah, I would actually practice, jumping maybe 5 BPM, 6 BPMs like that.
Okay.
So that it's until you get up to your top speed, and then I would go from that top speed to and see if I could increase it each day. Now, once again, thank you, Deb. Thank you, Laura. Now there are certain things that you can only practice, that you can only play at certain speeds. There are things that you cannot do, like I just did with alternate picking, that absolutely you cannot alternate pick an arpeggio. If I play a minor arpeggio, G minor, there's no way I can't alternate pick that, because you're constantly going in the opposite direction that you want to be going. Down, up. It's very, very impractical. So you should always work on the techniques that allow you to play things at the fastest tempos, because you don't want to get bound up. But don't get hung up on, there are certain things that you may want to play alternate picking to a particular tempo and then go to some new technique after that. I'm not one that believes in economy picking everything, or or playing legato for everything. You should really play what sounds best. And a lot of times, what sounds best is different at different tempos. Somebody just said Steve Morris alternate picks arpeggios. He used to be able to alternate pick arpeggios unbelievably fast, and he has terrible tendonitis now. He can barely play because of that
tension in his arms and his hands.
That's right. If you watched him play, you've seen him play before, and and he oh my God, I mean, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, had just unbelievable chops.
It's interesting. When I studied with you in the 80s when we met, I was complaining that I couldn't really go that fast. And you're like, but you play some mandolin. I'm like, yeah, I do a little bit. Wait, how fast can you do on a tremolo? And you're like, well, then you should, if you can move your left hand that fast, you can pick that fast.
That's right.
And mandolin players always talk about all these exercises around relaxing their hands.
That's right.
Because they're really playing really tight and really fast, alternate picking to get both strings. And David Grisman very famously had tendonitis in his hands. And so, yeah, relaxing, reminding yourself to relax, breathe, as part of lessons is something that I run into all the time. Reminding myself that I need to breathe.
It was funny when I interviewed Frank Gambale. Frank is 60 and his chops are unbelievable. He never had any problems with it. He's incredibly relaxed when he's playing.
Right.
Really is. It blew me away watching him up close play. Both hands, and he made a joke of it. He says, people tell me I should grimace more.
Right, more guitar face. Right.
Make it look harder.
Right.
And he had just played this unbelievably fast sweep picking thing, and that's when he said that, and it was pretty hilarious.
That's pretty
funny. But Frank is really, really relaxed. Larry Carlton too, from seeing Larry play a couple times.
Just recently.
Larry is so relaxed, and these are guys that are able to play years and years like that without getting tendonitis. The reason is because they it's either that they don't play very much, or and that's not the case. It's that they're incredibly relaxed.
Yeah. And they must have worked on it when they were younger. Their hands would be complaining more.
Although Steve Morris, his technique was unsustainable for, obviously as he got older. And then you get locked into a particular technique. I think it's, I think that you just have to be mindful of these things. And I'm lucky I've never had tendonitis ever. Have you had tendonitis before or no?
No, but as I'm 59 now, so the fact is, if I don't play, if I don't get in my arpeggio time and stuff, I wake up, my hands hurt. They're stiff. Just for first thing in the morning. If I do play, it's kind of the opposite of what you might assume. If I play, my hands are going to stay loose.
Okay,
that makes a big difference.
Now, I have arthritis. Now, arthritis is different than tendonitis.
This has become the old guy hour all of a sudden.
Yeah, no, I have arthritis. Like I have in my thumbs. Everybody knows that on here. And I'm getting it in my index finger, too. As you can see, my index finger is getting very crooked. And I'm noticing it in my picking that when I pick, sometimes on upstrokes, I'll get hung up because that finger is bent slightly and it'll catch the side of the nail. So I have to really...
Changing your technique.
You have to slightly change my technique on that.
So let's go back to how much time on each thing, and would you break up, say, repertoire work on a Monday and more scale and arpeggio work? It really comes down to how much, we're back to the 10-hour joke, but how much time do you have to spend every day?
Well, you definitely need to have some type of warm-up regimen, no question about it. That's I think that's the most important thing is to warm up. For anybody, you should warm up. So
do you have a favorite warm-up?
For me, I usually will just play over a particular chord progression, or I will play, practice arpeggios or practice scales. I mean, it's usually different on different days.
Yeah, I'm chuckling because I always remember this time that I was walking on campus at Ithaca College, and I walked past Rick, and he didn't say anything, and I'm like, "Yo, Hypes," and he walked right past. I said, "Why didn't you say hi?" And he looked at me and he goes, "I was soloing over changes in my head." He's walking across campus.
You used to do that.
Yeah, that's a good thing to do. You do that in your car.
So one day I may play. I might play. I need practice. Might play spread triads like that. Like now, like I need to practice that, right? And then the next day I might practice, my scales 3 notes per string, and the next day I might practice triads moving up in minor thirds.
So if I had an hour, or maybe I'm asking you to make it too regimented, and it really should be more to the individual student, because you were always good at that as an instructor of having different people work on different things. But if I had an hour to spend practicing, a good warm up.
Glass slide, thank you. An hour to practice.
Yeah.
I would probably at least give 10 minutes to scales and arpeggios out
use
of
that
that.
as a warm up.
Use that as a warm up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
In theory apps, thank you. Keith, favorite minimalism book or set of guidelines to help with gear acquisition?
My favorite book actually lately has been a book by a guy named Patrick Rohn. I think it's only available on Kindle, so I apologize about that. It's called Enough. And it basically did a whole bunch of essays about trying to decide what's enough. You have to have too much sometimes. You have to have too little at other times to have a sense of what's enough for you. That's my favorite book. That's what I always end up recommending is Patrick's book. And I actually did exchange emails with him. He's got a website. You can email him questions. He's really an interesting guy. He wrote the whole book on an iPad as an exercise in what's enough for himself, sitting in coffee shops in Minneapolis, when he get away from his little kids and do that. So that's my favorite book.
Well,
Thanks for asking.
Keith and I were talking about when I wrote my Beato book back in when I was teaching at Ithaca College back in the 80s, right back when I met Keith, just after I met Keith. And why did I write the book? And I wrote the book because I didn't want to teach things that people taught.
In a regimented way.
In a regimented
right.
way.
There were fixed curriculum.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there were, to me, a lot of really bad books that were out at the time. I'm not going to name them, but
Yeah.
I thought that there were some very poor early jazz education books that I thought explained jazz. That's what I was teaching at the time, jazz. I wasn't teaching rock guitar or anything. I was teaching jazz guitar, and I thought that they, I just thought that they did a very poor job at playing things. The way that they would suggest playing over chord changes, there's a lot of emphasis on things like avoid notes. And I never believed in avoid notes. So an avoid note, so if you play G major 7, for example, they would say avoid the 4. So play. So I just played a G major scale and I left out the note C. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. Now, yeah, that sounds okay on that. But it's like, if you're going to play, if you play the 4th, tell people how to use the 4th. So I used the 4th there as an upper neighbor tone or a suspension I played. So I resolved the 4th to the 3rd, 2nd to root. And that when you play looks like that. That's a perfect way to use the 4th right there. Or they would say, don't play the 6th on a minor chord. So if you played A minor 7, you'd play the scale. And I'd say, no, if you're gonna play that thing, you have to know how to use the 6th, though. When you go to and the reason they told you not to use the 6th is because it gave away the 3rd of the 5 chord coming up, the D7. So you want to, if you're going to do that, then I play the sharp 9 on that, right? So because you've already given away that note. So if I go back to the, and then, so if I play that 13th there, then I have to play. I would play a note with more tension on the dominant
I
chords.
thought you explained that to me really well yesterday. You're saying you're giving away that resolution early, so you need to create a stronger resolution to drive you home again to that major 7, right? Because then all of a sudden it doesn't feel like you're really needing to go anywhere.
Exactly.
It doesn't want to go back to the G, so you got to create more tension.
And that's something that people that are improvising, that to me makes their playing really weak, is if they give away resolutions before they happen. What you need to do is you always need to be leading the listener to where you're going. That's why that cycle of fifths exercise. That's why that exercise that's in my book is so important, because it teaches you how to 3, 4. It teaches you how to resolve chords properly on the beat, and give your playing direction, because that's probably the thing that when I hear people that are not great players, that's the thing where they're lacking the most. Anything else? Let's see. Let's
So how
see
much
here.
time, since we already had this conversation, how much time do you spend on repertoire?
Well, it depends on how much you need to. You need to. When I ask Keith, I'm like, what tunes do you know? And he says,
well, do you know How Insensitive? Yeah,
I said, you know How Insensitive?
Thing.
He says, no, I don't
remember
remember
the whole thing, yeah.
And I said, well, you need to work more on your repertoire then. Repertoire would be knowing tunes and things like that, whatever it may be. I mean, it may be that it may be cover tunes or something that you know.
I mean, for me, the way I think about it is, and there's a number of good, I mean, Amy Nolte has a really good video about this, like what standards you need to know.
Amy knows every standard.
Yeah, what she's saying, like, what does Keith need to know to go to the jazz jam? Because I haven't done this in years and years. I mean, 20 years ago, I had a quintet and we played every week, and then I had a good repertoire, but they're all gone. So I need to put those tunes back. We even live in a place where I could go sit in with those same guys who are still gigging. Well,
I would say go to Joe Pass's Virtuoso record if you're a jazz musician and learn every tune that's on the record, and you're safe, because you have Night and Day, How High the Moon, All the Things You Are, Around Midnight, Cherokee, The Song Is You. That's a pretty good list right there. Here's That Rainy Day. These are all on this one record. Those are songs that you used to have to know 30 years ago. But, we were listening to Brad Mehldau play Bittersweet Symphony or Black Hole Sun or, Radiohead tunes. I mean, Brad Mehldau came up with newer songs that are old now.
Right.
And made them standard. So you can make really any song a standard depending on,
Yeah, and Meldau's so good at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exit music for a film. I mean, he's kind of added things to the repertoire.
Although I told Keith this funny story with Dylan. So when Dylan was 5, we'd be driving in the car, and I was playing this Bittersweet Symphony, Brad Mehldau, which I thought was beautiful.
It is gorgeous.
So I was playing it, and Dylan said to me, he's like, why do you keep listening to that? That song is so boring.
It's the repetition.
And I said, because I like the sound of it, Dylan, all right? Okay. 5 years old. Why do you keep listening to that? It's so boring. It's like,
your music bores Dylan. Yeah.
Ouch. Brad would be, he'd be hurt by that.
Yeah.
A 5-year-old said it was boring.
Maybe you had to be there. You had to be in Vienna to enjoy it.
All right. So that's it for now. Remember to subscribe to Keith's channel, 5 Watt World. We're trying to put him over 50,000 subscribers. You guys are the best. Discount code, that's how we support the channel here, is RB251. 251. Okay? 30% off anything in my store. Any questions that you have, leave them in the comment section. Thank you to the Super Chat, Laura. I'm very happy to be your musical parent. And Glass Slide, we're your 2 favorite YouTube channels. That's awesome.
Nice.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Peter, any past book, Joe Pass book is worth its weight in gold. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, the blues book's been amazing for me.
Yeah.
The Joe Pass book.
His Joe Pass guitar style is incredibly good too. That's the one that I got in high school and learned a lot about reading from it. Wow, thank you, Eric. Really appreciate that. Wow. That's very, very nice. All right, everybody. 5 Watt World, subscribe. If you're new to here, subscribe. You guys are the best.
Thanks a lot.
We'll talk to you later.